Welcome to Chat with Me. Thank you so much for joining us. Today we have an incredible topic for you. We are going to talk to parents of children with special needs. And would you mind introducing yourself?
Hi, my name is Beth. My daughter Zoe has type 1 diabetes. It is an autoimmune disorder which affects her pancreas. She doesn't have insulin anymore. Her body doesn't produce it, so she has to be attached to an insulin pump for the rest of her life.
Wow, thank you.
Hi, my name is Maria. I am a mother of a daughter, 14-year-old girl that has bipolar disorder. She was diagnosed a few years ago, so it's just been a tough road.
I bet. Thank you.
My name is Bob. My son has a genetic disorder, which is pseudohypoparathyroidism type 1A.
Wow, that's a mouthful. Pseudohypoparathyroidism type 1A.
Yes.
I got it. All right, thank you so much.
My name is Sandy. I have a daughter named Hannah who's 13 years old. She has Down syndrome, which is a chromosomal anomaly. It happens at conception, and she is a very fine example of a typically developing child.
And I'm Jeff. My son has holoprosencephaly. He's 16 years old. Holoprosencephaly is a form of cerebral palsy, and he was diagnosed before birth.
Wow, that's fascinating. I honestly have never heard of that. Can you say it one more time for me?
Holoprosencephaly.
Holoprosencephaly. I got it? All
Good
right. See, I'm
job.
proud of myself when I can actually say these things. Wow, thank you guys so much for being here. Can you guys tell me what it was like maybe at the time of diagnosis? Like, Sandy, do you want to tell me? Because for you, you said it at conception, so did you know in utero?
In utero, yes. We were given the opportunity to have amniocentesis, and it's where they took amniotic fluid when Hannah was in utero, and through that it was determined that she would have Down syndrome. And basically what Down syndrome is a third copy of the 21st chromosome. So everything is typically developing more than likely, but that third copy is really the only thing that makes them different. But it was through amniocentesis that we found out, at 20 weeks. So.
Wow, and what was your reaction at that point?
At first it was denial. I thought it was a terrible mistake. But when she was born, I looked into her face and I said, "I'm happy you're here, and we've been waiting for you." And she is a blessing in every way. And it's a blessing.
I think the scariest thing, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, with any disability when they're diagnosed is just the unknown.
Yes.
And it's, particularly with Down syndrome, there can be any level of issues, any level of
Involvement.
Yes,
And,
correct.
And there are extenuating problems or challenges with different children. Some are, like you said, more involved and have heart problems or thyroid issues, things like that. So.
She is a blessing, though, isn't she?
Yes.
So, Beth, if you don't mind, share with us how you discovered that your daughter has type 1 diabetes, because that's a scary,
It's a pretty dramatic story, yeah. We thought she had the flu because the week prior she had just been lethargic and tired, vomiting, nausea, but we had this awesome family trip to Yellowstone and stuck her on the airplane, got there, and we were like, she's sick, we need to take her to a clinic. Took her to the clinic. They diagnosed her with the flu. Gave her fluids. She perked up a little bit, but she was still sick, very tired. Didn't even want to look out the windows at all of the, bison and everything. So we took her to another clinic. They tested her blood sugar. It was 415. Your sugar should be about 100. So they stuck us in an ambulance, took us to an ER, put us on a helicopter, where we ended up at Idaho Falls Pediatric Intensive Care Unit for 2.5 days. Yeah, it was crazy. And the really scary thing for me is she was the 5th child they had that week who had been in the
this
PICU,
particular
in
hospital?
that particular pediatric intensive care unit with type 1. It's not understood. It's
It's not
misdiagnosed.
understood. And it's very challenging in a child because some of their behaviors are very typical of that age group. So you wouldn't notice, you would just think they have the flu, or they're just excessively thirsty because they've been running around all day, or any of those things. So we will definitely have some resources at the end of the show for people to kind of look out for those things in their children. Thank you so much. Marie, you want to tell us about?
So mine was a little bit different. It's mental health, so it's not a thing that you can test your blood and you know that this is what they have. It's very much behavioral. You know, the many years. So she was diagnosed, she's 14 now. She's diagnosed when she was 12, officially diagnosed. Her counselor knew there was something off, and she kept telling me, Maria, talk to your doctor about bipolar disorder, because I see that I've seen the pattern.
And that's young, honestly, for bipolar. Typically, it's not diagnosed until they're 18, 19, 20, even older sometimes.
But she had been having issues since she was 6 years old. And it was triggered. It was triggered by the divorce, and I started taking her to counseling immediately. And it ended up being more family counseling because, you know, the other two kids needed to also be taken through the process of the divorce. So the counselor knew them from a very early age. And just seeing the differences, and every week, you know, we would talk to her and she would hear about the ups and downs. And so she kept telling me, maybe for a year, Maria, take her. But they didn't want to diagnose her with that. So they diagnosed her with anxiety. So she was ADHD diagnosed, taking medication since she was probably like 7 with ADHD, because she wouldn't stay still in class. She couldn't focus. So we got her diagnosed with that and got her on medication. So that started working. But then there would be like these like massive blowouts. So when she was around 11, the medication was just triggering her really, really bad. So it would give her massive ups and downs instead of actually helping her focus. So they diagnosed her with anxiety because she was having panic attacks. And when I finally weaned her off of her ADHD medication, we were able to kind of see a different side of her.
So they were seeing all these behaviors, so they got bits of it, and they were diagnosing her with sort of parts of it, and then when all the pieces came together, and it's probably viewed as poor parenting sometimes, and that's just
many
so
times.
unfair.
I felt like I was a bad parent many times. I was like, I can't believe, like, why did I have to get to this level? Why did I have to yell like this? You know,
but yet you've been on it since she was so little, so that's amazing. Thank you so much. Jeff, you want to tell us about when your son was diagnosed?
He was diagnosed before birth.
Oh, in utero as well.
Yeah, with an ultrasound, they recognized that the head size wasn't correct. So we learned and were encouraged at that point to terminate the pregnancy. They said there was going to be no quality of life. There was no reason to carry this on, no reason to put my wife's health at risk for a pregnancy that wasn't going to make it. And, you know, it's very difficult to make that decision right after you learn of a diagnosis, after you've carried, you know, after my wife had carried the child for as long as she had. So somehow we got the gumption of us that we weren't going to do it, left, and had time to process it and say, you know, this was our gift from God, you know, to have this child, and he's carried it this far. So we just decided that we were going to see what happened, and now he's 16 years old, and he. Yeah, and you know, he does school at home with Seminole County schools, and he can add, he can subtract, he can use an assistive technology device to communicate. You know, if you read him a story, he can tell you what it's about, and they're even now working with him on inferring things from a story that may not really be there, and he's been able to do some of that. So it just shows that, you know, you really need to trust your gut on these things and let it carry out whatever it's going to be. But there are challenges. He's medically fragile. I know that, you know, we have a lot of different varying degrees here on the couch today of that. But, you know, we spend about 6 weeks or more in the hospital a year. And it's not because of his underlying diagnosis, but he also has what's called diabetes insipidus, which is a sodium instability. So if he starts having a lot of vomiting or sickness or something, his sodium can get out of whack and
So they
has
have
to
to
be
get
very
that under
closely
control.
monitored, and IV fluids and that kind of stuff. So it's kind of it can be a domino effect when there's
Right.
illness.
Wow, thank you. Bob,
Yes, my son was diagnosed with pseudohypoparathyroidism, which is actually a neurological condition. We didn't find out until later on. He was diagnosed around age 10.
oh wow, is
And,
that typical?
I really don't know. As for diagnosis, it is very rare. So there's a good chance that most don't get diagnosed right away. We knew as he was growing up that there were issues, but couldn't really put a finger on anything or pinpoint what it was. Even had him evaluated a couple of times, and a lot of what appeared to be spectrum order issues, a little bit of ADD, a little bit of HDD, really manifests itself that way, and we chose not to medicate and just had him do the best he could through life. So really it's only delay issues and, as we mentioned, neurological. So luckily he's pretty normal.
Well, none of us are really normal, but we try. We do our best, right?
True.
So Jeff, you mentioned school. I think with all of these varying disabilities, how has education been, and how much have you had to push and fight to get your kids what they needed educationally and safety-wise, physically, with their issues? Beth, have you had any?
We were very lucky in that the elementary school she went to, the clinician was extremely well educated on it, because Zoe was not the only type 1 there. But we did get her a 504C plan, which is a plan that helps children with disabilities have rights in school, because she now goes to a special room to do all that testing. She can take as long as she needs to. She can't be without juice or a snack or any of that, because if her sugar gets low, she needs to eat something. So those are the protections we've gotten for her with school. Now, sometimes I do have to take her out of school because her sugar will get very high and it's hard to control it at school, so I'll bring her home. So she does miss classes, but we try to work with her teachers
And
to
how do you
make
know
up the
that
work.
during the day if she's?
So she wears a blood glucose monitor. It's usually on her arm. It's probably about that big. And it goes into her skin, and it sends a signal to her phone, which sends a signal to my phone and actually to my watch, that I can see
all
her
day
sugar.
long. You can
all
look
the
down at your
time.
watch right now. And
As
see
long
what-
as she gets a signal at school.
Okay.
Sometimes we lose
Sometimes-
signal at school.
okay.
But yeah, most of the time.
That's
And it
amazing.
wakes me up in the middle of the night. I was up with her twice last night. My husband was up with her once last night.
No
So.
wonder you love coffee so much.
Oh, sleep deprivation is the
I think
life
sleep
of T1D
deprivation is something we can all
Yeah.
right attest to when you have a child with special needs. So, anybody else in education have you had to?
I've had, for me, it's been, so she was diagnosed ADHD. Obviously, she can't focus, but I chose to remove the medication for that particular diagnosis from her completely. So it's been a struggle. It's hard for me to go in and ask for a child to be held back because it's not something that they do very much anymore. So with her, I asked in 6th grade. She had just gotten her IEP in 6th grade because I fought for it in elementary school, and it just took forever. So when she finally got her IEP in 6th grade, she needed another year. And
more of a maturity
for
type
maturity, for being able to understand the material. I felt like from that moment, she wasn't capturing a lot. There was so much going on in her life. And in our life, I had gotten diagnosed with illness as well. So it was just a lot going on, and they wouldn't hold her back. So it has caused a ripple effect. I asked for her to be held back in 8th grade. They wouldn't do it either. She's in 9th grade now and still struggling with her grades. So I think that it's really, really hard when some teachers don't understand that there is a learning disability, but they look completely.
And that's it. You're like you said, invisible disabilities are really, really difficult to deal with, especially in education. And we talked briefly about sleep and losing lack of sleep. I think parents of special needs children know sleep deprivation on a whole nother level. Like being a parent already, you wind up being sleep deprived. But when you have a child with special needs, especially when you're checking glucose in the middle of the night, it's got to just keep you up awake.
It's an anxiety that not many people can actually appreciate. There's anxiety about everything.
Everything.
And it's almost to the point of suffocation, where you just want the best for your child, and it's hard to get other people to understand what they need, and you at some point you are fighting. You're digging in and fighting for what you think they need. Hannah was recommended to go into a self-contained unit. I knew that wasn't right for her. She doesn't belong in a self-contained unit. So by doing that, she's been in typically developing classroom environment since kindergarten. And I had a couple of teachers that were on the foundation of that, saying that she doesn't belong there,
Because they knew her ability.
Exactly. So it's the anxiety, and just, you don't want to make a mistake. You don't want to do wrong by your child, you're having a typically developing child and then a child with special needs. Your anxieties are so completely different.
Are they?
Yes.
See, I worry about all my kids, but I think I'm just a worrier. But you're right.
Yeah.
I think with a child with special needs, you worry about not just today, you worry about their future. And as we get older, you think, well, how are they going to function, or what are they going to do when we're no longer here?
I've had cancer twice, and the first thing that pops into my head are, what are my children going to do without me? And that's what you think of. Even if you don't have any illness, you're thinking, what's going to happen when I pass away?
Right.
So that's another anxiety level.
And what do you do? Do you have things set up in a way that things are ready for them if something does happen?
We created a special needs trust for our son. Did a lot of research, found a good attorney and everything that, set everything up with our wills and the trust, so that, money that we have, that would go to his special needs trust would be used in the right way to be able to care for our son, when we're gone, making sure that there are people that are going to take custody, and people that are going to watch finances. All that can be outlined for that purpose.
Good. Excellent. Thank you. So with all of this and all of the disabilities that we're dealing with here, how do you feel the outside world views our children, or how they treat us or them?
I think we talked a little bit about this before the show, and I think a lot of people just don't know how to deal with it.
Right.
You end up with a whole different set of support than you probably had before your child was born. We have nurses that take care of our son that have become great friends to us. Yeah. Our doctors, our care team that we have in place at our hospital has a coordinated care for kids program that make sure that that's all being managed, with all the different doctors that care for our son are kept in the loop about things that are going on with him. And they do become your friends, because you spend so much time with them.
Because it truly does take a village, and not everybody has that village.
Well, you have to trust, these people. You have to trust them. I'll make a quick comment, though. Hannah, this is something about how the world sees. Hannah tried out for cheerleading this year, and she made cheerleading at the school, okay? Yay. So I think it's the first time that they've had anyone with a diagnosis on their team. But she's out there with the other girls doing everything that they do. Of course, she does it a little slower or a little out of step. But what it's showing is it's showing the world that, and I told the coach that you are raising the flag and you're leading the charge, because these girls are leaders in the school, and people will see how they treat Hannah, and they will set the pace. So I think that when we were younger, children with any kind of different
whether it's type 1 diabetes or bipolar, they were seen as different.
And tucked away,
And
quite
tucked
frankly.
away. And I think that every step that we make forward is just going to make it that much better for the next generation. You know,
I love it.
And so I really applaud, you know, anybody that gets their child out there, if that's what their child wants to do. If they don't want to do it, that's
Yeah, you don't wanna
perfectly
push
fine
them.
too.
Yes.
But
But what a blessing for all of it. I think the girls on the team,
absolutely.
great for them, and it, you know, it gives them that insight for their
And
future.
I will have to say that I was just very pleasantly surprised at how well Hannah was accepted and how everybody wants to help her. And of course, Hannah doesn't think that she needs help. So she's like,
No.
what are you helping me for?
Right.
You know?
I'll help you.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, right now, I feel like with the way the world is right now, I think we're all desperate for this love and this kindness. So when you see these things, because those things on social media, they go viral because people want that. People want the inclusion. People want the love and acceptance. So I think it's beautiful. I think that's amazing.
It is. It gives you faith in human spirit, you know, and I makes you hopeful for the future.
Yes. And it is different because with Hannah, you can look at her and you can see that she has this diagnosis. But again, as we said, with type 1 diabetes or mental health issues, it's not visible. So it's a whole different ball game.
Yeah.
And
I think that it's I've had to learn that there's no manual, that it's
For any parent.
for any parent in general, and then dealing with any type of illness like this, you don't know how to even begin to deal with it. So the things that you do, I have to be kind to myself and say, you know what, you tried your best. And that's been one of the things that I've tried to teach them as well, my kids in general, but definitely my Isabel, because her mindset isn't normally a positive mindset. And I am a super chirpy, positive person, and she's in this mood. So I've had to teach her little by little how to do affirmations, how to do things so that it can help
to
her
trigger her brain to go to the more positive
way.
route.
And that's been difficult in itself, but huge improvements, especially over the last year.
I love it. And it's so funny you say that because as a parent of a child with special needs, you do, it's not just the parenting, you do have to change sort of your own brain because I'm from New York. I walk fast, I talk fast, I eat fast, I do everything fast. And her brain goes a little bit slower to be able to receive the information I'm giving. So I would be like, go upstairs and change this and do that. And da, da. So she'd walk upstairs because that's the first thing I'd said. And then she'd look down like, what was next? And I was like, oh, you know better, Robin, give her one step at a time, and then, and once you alter
those are things
that.
you learn though. Yeah, you learn little by little. And that was one of the things that was big because again, through the process, I was like, God, I'm such a failure. And it's not, it's more, I'm doing the best that I can with the resources that I have and learning how to deal with it and having the patience for her to learn how to deal with it, I think is big.
I think that being kind to yourself is a big, we face so much more than a typical parent, and giving yourself that room to have a mistake or to forget, or being kind to ourselves. I find that with myself as well. I'm very hard on myself.
Yeah.
I consider myself a failure sometimes too, and you just have to be, you have to.
I think that's so typical,
Be mindful.
honestly, of all parents. But we take it to the nth degree. Beth, were you gonna?
I think it's important to find a support system if you can.
Yes.
Not
just your medical team,
exactly,
which are amazing and
yes,
wonderful.
well, you need them.
But you need
yes.
your friends. You need
Yeah.
to be able to sit at a table at night with a glass of wine, not that I do that, and say, oh, this was so frustrating today. I know it's because she has this, but this is why it's happening, because we do feel, we're allowed to feel, and we're allowed to get frustrated. We just can't make them feel like.
And sometimes that's hard, though, being in a group of people who don't have a child that has challenges, because let's say, for instance, Hannah doesn't want to say hello, and somebody gets hurt, and I can't explain to you why Hannah's acting that way. It's just part of her mood today, accept that for being who she is. And not everybody understands that. So to find that core group of people who are your support system and accept your child for who they are and what they are is hard to find.
We've talked a lot about, people don't know what to do. And I think, some of the things that we've learned and have shared with others is, show empathy. Understand, think about walking a mile in the shoes of any of the parents on this couch today. Don't be sympathetic, be empathetic, understand that. And even if you don't know what to do, just being there, even if you don't know what to say, just be there for them and understand that, that's what they need. And if they're having a crisis with their child, just to be able to come to the hospital room if they're in the hospital and just sit with them for 30 minutes and just don't say a word. Let them start. Let them tell you what they need.
I love that because when those issues are there, because my daughter also has severe medical issues, you're so engrossed in the moment, and every second, and the hospital hours are like triple hours time because it just lasts forever and things go slow. It's like hurry up and then wait, and then hurry up and then wait. So just having somebody there to step outside of that with your brain for just a minute just makes everything, and it's true. Okay, so is there anything else that you feel that you would want people to know about being a parent of a child with special needs?
I like what you touched on just now is the empathy.
The empathy.
Just a mile in my shoes. We may do a good job at providing this facade that everything's cool, we're going along life and we've got it all under control, but underneath the surface.
Yeah. I love to give the duck example. Have you heard the duck
It's
example?
perfect.
So when you see a duck, they're gliding along the water and they're so smooth and everything's fine, but what do you think's going on underneath? Their feet are just going and going and going. That is us, and we have to glide, but we also have to pedal along to get through everything.
It can be one step forward, 2 steps back all the time, especially when you got so many different things going on and things can be so chaotic, in a hospital situation, or you're, getting one issue fixed, but then another pops up because of a change with the first issue that they were in. So it can be a struggle for the families, and not only that, they're usually even more sleep deprived when they're in the hospital.
Yes.
Or anything like that.
It's not comfortable to sleep in a hospital. There's noises constantly. They're like, you need to rest. Okay, stop walking in at 4 in the morning.
I'll be in 30 minutes to give your child his next medication, but you rest now.
Exactly. So one last quick question for you guys. How well do your children know about their own disability?
My son's very aware.
He's very well versed.
And it's been a struggle because he is so high level. All the way through from preschool through elementary school, middle school, and high school. When we first transitioned him into the school system, we were on the outskirts of a large city, and they had no program whatsoever. And as the program developed, we fought every year. We had IEP meetings, and a lot of
That's
people.
That's another thing. We're like totally great with acronyms, right? Yeah. Anyone who has a child with special needs,
right.
We have like 50,000 acronyms. We know them all. Drop in the IEP, the 504, the ESE.
Another one is his diagnosis through the school system up to the point where he was actually diagnosed was a best guess. So he was PDD-NOS, which for those of you that don't...
Pervasive developmental disorder.
Exactly.
Not otherwise specified.
Not otherwise specified. So who knows what it is? We're trying to figure out what it is.
Right.
And a lot of teachers wouldn't believe that he had anything, beyond minor issues. So they weren't willing to work with him that much.
So he had to be self-aware.
Absolutely. And I would say that, very small changes and looking at things in as much detail as you can along the way make all the difference.
Okay. And then Zoe, because it's her blood sugar, has to be aware.
Zoe is in charge of her care during the day at school. Even though I do text her, if I see her getting high or low, at lunchtime, she's the one who gives herself her insulin, she counts her carbs, she's got to know everything she puts in her body, she has to know what it is and what it does to her. She's extremely self-aware, but every T1D kid is, and they have to be.
They have to be.
Because everything they do affects their life. everything. I mean, she does her pump changes, she does her CGM, her glucose meter changes, all of that.
It's amazing. And we've already said that Hannah is walking around like, I am who I am.
To be honest with you, we've never really explained to her, but we've never treated her like she had a diagnosis. She was expected, she's been in a typically developing classroom. She takes the tests with everybody. She has modifications due to her individualized education plan. However, we try not to, she makes her bed, she does everything. It's not because, she doesn't have any excuse. She's required to do everything else. So we've never really treated her like she has a diagnosis. As far as comprehension, I don't think she gathers that she's different, and because we haven't treated her that she's different.
All of your kids are absolutely amazing, and I am so grateful that you guys were all here today. So thank you so much for joining me. Thank you for being open and honest with us, and like I said, we'll provide some resources toward the end of the show. So really, thank you so much for being here. You guys make sure you take care of yourselves and do not forget to take care of each other. Thanks for joining us.